Let's do it.
Okay. Welcome everyone to Unpacked with Liat. Today I'm sitting with Lisa. She is a licensed clinical social worker who has experience for the past 15 years working in the mental health realm, in corporate world as well, and working in the maternal mental health frame as well. A little bit of an into why Lisa is sitting here today is because she was actually my therapist for about 5 years, and she helped me navigate through some postpartum stuff. And I wanted to bring her here to talk about peripartum and postpartum depression, anxiety, and give us an into how that can look for you as the patient and what that can look like as the person in your support system, and the signs, how they can be of support to you, how to know when to ask for help, how to get the help you need. And so I just kind of want to give the floor to you, Lisa, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And this is a very cool experience. And I feel it really feels amazing to be sitting down with you on the other side of things.
Right, I'm sure.
I've graduated. I love it. But I will start by saying this is a huge topic. We're going to get to some of it today, but it is a huge topic with a lot of subparts.
Right.
And first and foremost, I always like to kind of start with what is pre and postnatal depression and anxiety? What is postpartum depression and anxiety?
Right.
And by the way, when I refer to PPD and PPA, I'm referring to postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety.
Right, because that's more common than peripartum, which peri means before or during the pregnancy, post means
after delivery. And a couple interesting things too about peripartum is that oftentimes actually, although I definitely agree with you, postpartum depression and anxiety are a lot more common. About 10 to 20% of all women will get postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety in their lifetime, which is a very high percentage.
Yeah.
Especially with people who have multiple pregnancies.
Yeah.
But prenatal depression and anxiety while a woman is pregnant, oftentimes it is there, but doesn't get diagnosed or treated because it can look like traditional pregnancy symptoms. Meaning, some anxiety and or depression symptoms while a woman's pregnant can look like really bad insomnia, feeling exhausted, but you can't sleep on the anxious side. Depressive, meaning like very tearful, very sad. These are common symptoms of hormone changes, which is typical of a pregnancy. So
they get written off.
Very written off by physicians, historically by physicians first and foremost, which is very interesting. It's a whole nother topic of historically what has happened here, why there isn't as much awareness around this topic. I mean, thankfully, we do live in today's time where there is more and more and more awareness, which is great.
Yeah, and access to information too.
Yeah, and help, and people specializing in it as well.
Yes.
So that's huge. But I will say, first and foremost, don't ignore symptoms during the pregnancy. And we'll get back in a few minutes to sort of like risk factors, what makes somebody more likely to have prenatal depression or anxiety or postpartum. There are pretty specific risk factors, so we'll talk about those. And then just to kind of put it out there, what does postpartum depression look like and what does postpartum anxiety? Okay. I feel like from there we can kind of, just so people are aware of what we're talking about. Sometimes when people say, I had postpartum depression, oftentimes they weren't diagnosed with it. They don't exactly know what it is. And oftentimes they might be saying that because they felt baby blues. So I like to describe postpartum depression
because there's a difference between the baby blues, and there's also a difference between when a woman chooses to nurse and her milk matures, and that's usually around the 2-week mark, postpartum, post-delivery. And some women experience what's called DMER, which is the depressive letdown as you nurse. And it usually goes away or subsides the longer you nurse. But if you're not aware of it, you can attribute that to being postpartum depression.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets complicated and why it is so important to pay attention to your symptoms, pay attention to your body, and be in touch with your OBGYN about what's happening. I would say first and foremost, your OBGYN, hopefully it's someone you're comfortable with, is really the point person for it. Because in 2026, most OBGYNs are well-versed in what postpartum depression, what postpartum anxiety are, any mental health conditions postpartum.
Right.
And they're well-versed on the medical side.
Right.
So they're able to understand Is this more medical? Is this more mental? Where's the overlap? It can get very confusing with all of these different variables. But like you're saying, even with nursing, for example. But I will say, I always like to say, just kind of like from a scientific standpoint, the main difference between baby blues, which is like normal postpartum period, and postpartum depression, and then postpartum anxiety, I'll kind of break it down, is if I had to really dumb it down to three things, it would be severity, duration, and impairment.
Okay.
So severity in terms of how severe are the symptoms, right? So depression is going to look like lots of crying, inability to get out of bed or to get out of bed, or inability to sleep at all, one extreme or the other. Okay. There's definitely something called postpartum rage, postpartum irritability, and oftentimes people don't realize that that's a big indicator of postpartum depression. It's where you just the woman just feels rage at all times. Rage at their partner, whether they feel they're not supporting them or a variety of different things. Yeah. It can also just be rage at their partner for no reason. I know for me, for myself, I had very bad postpartum depression after my first son. And I remember walking on Beverly Drive on a Shabbat afternoon with my sister. This is like a few months after I had the baby. And my husband said something to me in the back. He was walking with my brother-in-law. And I remember just turning to my sister and being like, I want to rip his head off. She's like, why? I'm like, no, I have this rage against him. She was like, okay. And it was unexplained. It was, I don't know, maybe it's this sort of unexplained, subconscious, they don't have to do the hard work, right? Whatever it is, it's something that happens.
Which goes into something that I want to talk to you about once you're done with the explanation of losing your identity.
Yes.
As a result of bringing a child into the world, which is a beautiful thing, but you're absorbed
absolutely
into this new reality.
Yeah.
And you lose your identity.
In a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
A lot of different ways.
Yeah. So you said severity.
Okay. Yeah. So severity. And so I gave you some examples of symptoms. By the way, am I going to go through all of the clinical symptoms of
right? We have Dr. Google and ChatGPT for that.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's emotional symptoms, cognitive symptoms, brain fog, can't concentrate. And then there's behavioral social symptoms like complete social withdrawal, isolation. You don't want to talk to people anymore. You find yourself wanting to hole up versus going out, right? Things of that nature.
And I will also say that it's probably commonly misdiagnosed as well in the postpartum phase, because we are told to stay home, not take the baby out, to 40 days, there's the 40 days on the bed, 40 days on, whatever people say. Every society, every culture has a different postpartum protocol.
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, the lack of sleep, right? So on a regular day when I don't sleep, I am not a pleasant person. Then add hormones and night sweats and a baby waking you up and other children and the responsibilities of life. It can so easily go undiagnosed or unnoticed not because everybody else around you isn't walking on eggshells, but you yourself are just telling yourself it's just lack of sleep. Yeah. If I take a nap today, I'll be fine.
Absolutely.
And I think that we as women so easily dismiss our own symptoms, and it goes so undiagnosed for so long until we sometimes reach that breaking point. And then people have to shake us and be like, you need help.
Yes.
You're not okay.
Yes. It's both difficult, along those lines from, women traditionally, there's a reason we have babies. We're badasses.
Right.
We are extremely strong beings who can handle a lot. And I think we've been like this forever collectively, where we just go, 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 go until we can't go anymore.
Right.
And it's difficult for us to kind of stop and be like, no, I think we're getting better at this self-care, right? Not serving from an empty vessel, but to stop and say, you know what? I don't know if I'm okay, right? And then there's the other piece of it, which is the shame. Mm-hmm. Why am I not okay?
Right.
Why am I having these thoughts? Why am I feeling this way?
Right.
I should be obsessed with my baby. I should, all of these should.
Yeah. And those thoughts, speaking from personal experience, those thoughts can be really scary. And those thoughts can make you wonder about, I love this child. Why can I be thinking this way?
Yeah.
And it's scary to have those thoughts, but it's Going back to what you're saying about the shame, it's scary to voice those thoughts out loud, even to a trusted person,
Yeah.
to a safe person, because you don't want to be judged for having those thoughts and that you can't control those thoughts.
No.
I believe from a therapeutic perspective, like, yes, there are certain thoughts that you can stop and you can control instead of spiraling. But when we're talking about postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, you can't control those thoughts.
Absolutely not. The brain is controlling you, which is why it is so important to get help. It is so important. And we'll talk about what help looks like a little later on in the conversation, but it is so important because you're not clear-headed. Nobody's clear-headed postpartum.
Right.
You're not sleeping. Forget even postpartum depression, anxiety, and any post-mental health conditions. You are not in your prime. You just had a baby. You're healing physically. You're potentially nursing, maybe not, dealing with feeding the baby, sleepless nights. You probably, in our community, have multiple other kids. I mean, it's just a crazy time.
Right.
The last thing you're really doing is like sitting with yourself and thinking, am I okay? Right?
Yeah.
But it is, and that's also, again, why it's so important to be aware of these things prior to going into pregnancy, if you can be, and also for partners. This is going to be something we talk about too. This is how part of how you support is psychoeducation. Learn about this. Learn what to look out for. Learn how to support your spouse throughout the pregnancy, postpartum particularly.
This is one of the big things that you and I worked on, because one of the reasons why two of my kids have a bigger gap, so to speak, but is because I suffered postpartum depression and I didn't even know it until a year later when I put a random anonymous post on LA Mommies and you responded, and we didn't have the finances, and you were like, it's fine. Like, this is like, it was a joke of a fee, but like you so desperately saw that I was desperate, and like out of the goodness of your heart, you took me on as a client. And it took me years working with you to be okay to get pregnant again.
Yeah.
And it took me years to even it was so far off in my brain. And then I remember having a conversation with you saying, how do I know that I'm ready? And you responded back by saying something along the lines of, well, if you're having those thoughts of like, maybe it's time, maybe this, then like you're there. Like, you're never going to be fully ready because you only have the past experience to inform you. You gotta kind of like rip off the Band-Aid and
just jump in a little
bit. And I'll be there to support you throughout the pregnancy and throughout the postpartum phase to make sure that even if these things happen, we'll have the support that you need. But it was so scary for me to even think about getting pregnant again.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and I will say your story, just kind of the way we met, you know, if I can say, Liat, literally.
This is an open forum. You could say whatever you want.
I think I had posted on LA Mommies, or maybe you had posted on LA Mommies anonymously.
I posted anonymously and you replied.
And I replied. And by the way, that's a great first step for somebody who's nervous, scared, doesn't want to tell a significant other for some reason, or whoever it is, to post anonymously. I mean, the ability that people can do that nowadays is great.
Yeah.
And I personally reached out. And I remember, you know, it's really, I have to say this, it's incredible to see the change in you as a human being.
Thank you.
From that first time meeting you when you were in the height of postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Early on. And I will say, and we're going to get to risk factors in a second, but you had a lot of risk factors for someone to have postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And then to work with you for a couple of years and see the person you got to be was insane.
I could be your poster child. Like, for her private practice, guys, there's just going to be a photo of me on her business card. Success story.
I love it. That's it. We've got Liat, confident, driving.
Exactly.
No, but it wasn't me. It was you. It was you. It was you being brave. It was you meeting me week by week, working through it. We would have a lot of conversations where it was really difficult for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously part of having a therapist and part of working with moms is for sure having a supportive environment, being a supportive therapist.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of, we need to work through some of this, a lot of CBT work.
Yeah.
On how to combat some of your intrusive thoughts, some of, your depressive thoughts, things of that nature.
Yeah.
I won't go into too much detail, but I will say that to watch you transform from that to just how how the confidence of you as a mother in general and a person,
Yeah.
which I thought was really interesting too. Even though we were focused a lot on postpartum, we ended up moving a lot into rebuilding your identity
Yeah.
as a person.
Yeah. Because
Your transformation is very
so I think because the way that I understood being a good wife and being a good mother meant that I needed to sacrifice. And my time will come later, but right now, this is what I need to do. So that led to me following Lenny to New York when I was, I had a baby and I was 7 months pregnant. And then following him back here when he got offered a job when I had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. And then living in Airbnbs. And that's when I contacted you because I had just like, it was just too much. And also the conditioning that I felt like I had of like, you have a baby right away, you don't go on birth control. And I don't regret it for a second because it made me into who I am today, but not understanding what that means to have a child and the responsibilities. Like I became an aunt at a very young age and I babysat and I took care of, and I knew the motions.
right.
I didn't understand the emotional toll of having a child and the emotional reward of also having a child.
Absolutely.
Because with each one of my kids, thank God, I've been pushed into a new version of myself, so to speak, and I've developed into who I am today. And if it wasn't for those 2 kids, I wouldn't have had that breaking point and I wouldn't have been who I am. I wouldn't be who I am today and I wouldn't be where I am today.
1000%.
But shifting that understanding of like, no, I can ask and I can be and I do deserve, and not in a way of like I deserve, give it to me like in this like cocky way, but more understanding and knowing your worth in a humble way was something that I had to learn.
Absolutely. Sort of like hugging your inner child,
Yeah.
so to speak, giving
Yeah.
yourself a hug.
And that was the hardest work for me, more than getting over the instability of the postpartum. Like that was the hardest part for me to work on, was learning how to give myself and to love myself enough to know that I'm worthy of giving.
Absolutely. And I think along those lines, women, all moms, women, with subsequent pregnancies, whatever it is we're struggling with prior to getting pregnant, prior to having children, is going to come out tenfold once you get pregnant and have kids. So kind of, the more kind of work you do on yourself, the more insight and understanding you have on yourself, where your insecurities, what growth you have, the better along too, I will say, you will get when you get to those places, when you get pregnant or when you get, because it's going to amplify.
100%. And I think that knowing that today and doing all the work that I've done up until this point, I know myself so much better that from child 2 to 3, I was able to set myself up better postpartum. And from 3 to 4, I was also able to set myself up better because I knew what I needed more and I knew what I needed to vocalize. And instead of looking at the monetary value of like, gosh, like we have to hire help from 4 to 7 so that I'm not yelling at my kids when they're home because they need my attention, but it's just too much, man. Like just having the mindset of like, it's a phase.
Yes.
And it's okay if it's tight budget wise for a little bit, like this will pass. And like better that I put the money into this as opposed to like completely losing it and not have the support that I need, or figure out a way that maybe my husband could be home more, or maybe a friend could come over and help more, or whatever supports. Like it's not always attached to money, but finding and knowing yourself better to know how to put those supports in place. And I think you learn that with every child that you have, or even the more self-aware you become, you learn what you need more and you learn how to vocalize more, and you get less guilty and you care so much less about the amount of help that you need, or about the amount of support that you need, or how you choose to feed your child, or how much screen time you give, or whatever. Like it's a game time decision for this phase of life that you're in.
1000%.
And nobody lives your life except for you. Like I want everybody to hear that again. Nobody lives your life except for you. What works for you is not going to work for me. and vice versa.
Yep.
Don't give a shit. Just do what you need to do.
100%. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Going back to when you first posted anonymously,
Mhm.
I think it was like LA Jewish Mommies or something like that.
So,
One of the groups.
Some of those groups. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't even know.
What got you at that place, for like listeners who might be in this position,
Yeah.
someone in this position,
Yeah.
what got you to post, to actually take the initiative to post?
We were at a point in our lives where we had moved. I'll kind of give a little history. So we were living here in LA. I had my first daughter and I got pregnant with my second. And Lenny really wanted to go into the food industry. We were told that like going to New York would be better. So on a whim, we just like basically packed up and we went to New York. I was 7 months pregnant when we got to New York. I had my daughter in Mount Sinai, and then he was working in various restaurants, and he was pretty much gone, I would say, between like around 16 hours a day. By the time he like woke up, went to work, got home, like, he was pretty much up around the same time as me. Like we would have that morning, but it really wasn't having that morning time. And then he would come home later than me. Like he would come home much later, and I was probably already asleep. Also, at that point, I had a new baby. I didn't really have anybody close to me. His brother was living in the city, and my brother was living in Great Neck, too far, like 45 minutes in each, like to come to us. So I didn't have like direct support like in my neighborhood. We didn't really know anybody. Added to that, that we were living in a community that didn't have an eruv. So I was stuck at home on Shabbat also with two littles. And the only person that I really had to communicate with was my housekeeper. That was the only person that I knew, which really, like, honestly, thankfully to my mother-in-law and my and her husband, Lenny's stepdad, that we had no money at the time, and they realized that like 202 is not a joke, and they really paid for her to be there and help me because they knew how
Amazing.
unavailable he was. And then Shabbat was Shabbat, but like again, we weren't really together. Like we were in the same room, but I didn't realize it until we came here for my daughter's second birthday. We celebrated her second birthday. I went to go put my kids back to sleep, my mother-in-law's house in the marina, and Lenny was hanging out here by his brother's house where we had the birthday party. And one of his brother's friends mentioned charcoal, that like they have a new restaurant ready to go, they don't have a chef.
Right.
And so when we came back, I was planning on having, like, we were planning on having a date night. So by the time I got back to the city, he was like, oh, there's this restaurant, they're saying they need a chef, do you want to check it out? From there, it kind of just flew and took off. He accepted. I think a day or two later, I got news that my grandmother in Israel passed away. So I left the two here and I flew to Israel for a week to go be with my family and to like go like just pay my respects and do that. I came back. He was very heavily involved in the setting up of the new restaurant. I think the soft opening was like a week later. So really, it was like I think he was coming home at like 2 a.m, leaving at like 7 a.m. Like it was crazy.
Yeah. So definitely really not a lot of partner support.
No, we didn't have the money at the time, but somehow like I would find ways to like pay for like help once a week or twice a week because I just like I had two under two and we were living from Airbnb to Airbnb and we were only planning on being here for a week. So I only had that suitcase. Then I had to call my housekeeper in New York and basically tell her that like we're moving here. And I had to figure out a cross country move while managing my two kids and trying to find a place to live and signing up my oldest for school. And just, I mean, it was a mess and we were fighting a lot. And a lot of it was coming from me. The rage that you're talking about.
Yep.
Just outbursts of like, now I could say it came from a deep loneliness.
Yes.
Like that I can say happens to me every single time I'm postpartum. I get this sense of loneliness, but like it was so deep. And at the time, I didn't even realize that it was postpartum depression. I just thought that like life was just so unstable. And I was just this like puppet, like following Lenny everywhere and not getting the recognition, but not being acknowledged and the understanding of like, whoa, this is a lot for her. And there was just so much around that like I think at one point like it was it was just a moment of desperation. And it like, I don't even think I thought at that point. I really think that like Hashem like took my hands
And was like, I
go
need
like,
help.
yeah, I need help. And then you came along and you came to the apartment that we were staying at, one of the Airbnbs. And I remember this so clearly. And you gave me the intake form. And it was the first time in my life that I'd ever seen an intake form.
Yeah.
And I remember this question: do you have suicidal ideations? Do you have suicidal thoughts? Do you have plans? And I just went blank. And I was shocked that I couldn't answer clearly yes or no. And that scared me more than anything. And I understood. I was like, okay, I really need help. Like, if I can't answer, because I am a clear, like, even with all my crazy personality, whatever, but like, I know myself. So, like, if I couldn't answer that question clearly, yes or no, that scared me. And I was like, okay, something is really wrong here. And I have to figure this out.
100%.
And that's kind of like where we took off for the next 5 years.
Yeah. And I actually remember that. I remember you pausing and saying, I don't know, I don't think I can answer the rest of this.
Yeah.
Which to me, as a clinician, said she needs help.
Yeah.
You know, we have to figure out A, the answers to those questions, and B, if they are yes, let's work through it.
Yeah.
You know, and I will say your journey is amazing. Your whole journey is amazing. Your life story is amazing.
Thank you.
But I will say, you know, for people listening, to please be as brave as Liat was, even if it's anonymous, even if it's reaching out online to a friend, to an OBGYN. There's so many, and we'll talk about different ways you can reach out, but don't get to that place where you're just really drowning. If you can try to help yourself before that happens and notice the symptoms, it's going to be an easier road. Liat worked her butt off.
Yeah, but that's why I'm so passionate about it now, because obviously I believe that there's a reason why I had to go through it. And I believe that I'm in the role that I need to be in today to help people. And I had to go through that in order to understand. But there's so much that like I learned about not only myself, but like interpersonal relationships, motherhood, friendships, whatever relationships. And it led me to also getting my MSW degree, because I was like, I need more information. I need to understand what's going on. I need to be able to talk to people about this. And like, it was something that I do think for a while I carried shame for.
You judged yourself a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of self-criticism, self-judge, self-judgment. Yeah.
And now I'm just kind of like, I get intrusive thoughts. And you know what? It's really scary. And it's better for me to be sitting in the living room nursing than be sitting in my room. And if this makes you uncomfortable, like, you can leave the room, you know, like.
Absolutely.
And I do think that sometimes you need to make the person sitting on the other end asking you the uncomfortable question, you need to make them feel uncomfortable, because they're not doing it because they want to be mean or they have the intention of making you. They don't know. They don't know. They've never experienced it.
Yeah.
But they need to know.
Absolutely.
And if you could be that person to educate them and tell them, like, this question is inappropriate because this and this and this and this and this. It's important because you might be stronger than the next person that they ask that question to, and they need to learn. And so I think I'm in that space now where, depending on who it is, I'll be honest, you know, it's not like clear cut, like, oh, all of a sudden I have this backbone and I could like back talk everybody. No, it really depends on who it is. But having that and being able to say that, it definitely gets a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. And it's just a part of my postpartum experience so far.
Your individual package. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just what happens to me as a result.
Yeah.
So far. And having that knowledge, having that awareness is the number one thing.
1,000%.
Yeah.
You mentioned intrusive thoughts a little bit. What do you mean by that? We didn't really specify that.
My experience of intrusive thoughts, it's usually when I'm sitting alone in my bedroom late at night. Most common is late at night. I'm like middle of the night, those middle of the night wakings. So it'll be thoughts of, it's like either thoughts of like not me directly harming the baby, but it'll be thoughts of like crazy situations that could potentially happen to the baby. Or I'll wake up in a panic and like check on the baby because I might have like dozed off, and in my mind, like I saw a scenario and I thought that was reality. And it could also be thoughts of negativity towards myself, just in ways that like are not even helpful. But again, it's not like, thank God, it's not thoughts of like self-harm or harming the baby. It's just these scary thoughts of like all the possible scenarios that could potentially go wrong. And even saying them out loud, beyond the judgment, beyond the shame, beyond whatever, is scary because we're taught not to give things energy and not to ayin hara and not to say it out loud and God forbid. And but a part of like letting go of it is saying it out loud. And so it's this hard balance of like, but I need to say it because I need to like say it to somebody else and somebody else be like, no, like that's crazy. That and label it for me when I'm in that moment and say,
those are intrusive thoughts.
That's an intrusive thought that you're having right now. Like, you know, and that's kind of what happens. And it definitely gets amplified the more lack of sleep that I have together with the letdown, because I do get the DMER, the depressive letdown. So together with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
100%.
It's a wonderful package.
Just tie it up with a bow. Intrusive thoughts are extremely common, both in pregnancy, but especially postpartum.
Yeah.
So what you're describing is, I would say, more along the lines of like postpartum anxiety intrusive thoughts. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much exactly what you described. They're generally, so just to explain, they're ego dystonic, meaning they are thoughts that you are aware that they are not good thoughts.
Yeah.
Like you are fully aware that they're not good thoughts. When somebody is not aware that those are good thoughts, that gets much scarier.
Right.
That's much more urgent. And that's usually more of sort of like a 911 thing.
Yeah.
So as long as they're ego dystonic thoughts, you're along the lines of PPD or PPA and you just need help kind of getting through it and support. But those are very common. And oftentimes, other women might also be experiencing things like perpetual, very graphic, you kind of spoke about this, but very graphic accidents, diseases, terrible things, and you can't stop thinking about it. That would happen to your baby or to you. I would say that's more along the lines of intrusive thoughts with postpartum anxiety. With postpartum depression, it could look more like, obsessive thoughts that keep coming to you of like, does my family even need me here? Do I even matter? Things of that nature. And that can easily and quickly lead to thoughts of suicidal ideation. Yeah. So it's definitely, I would say, intrusive thoughts. Once you notice you're having them, that's also an alarm system for, you know what, maybe I should get help. Yeah. Maybe I should talk to somebody about this.
Yeah. And I will say, once I had the awareness of it, when I reached out to you, it made it not a lot easier to go through the postpartum period the third time around, but it did make it easier to label what was going on.
Exactly.
Because I had the knowledge, I had the language, I had the vocabulary. And it was also something that we would even bring Lenny into session sometimes and say, like when I was pregnant with my third, and say, okay, this is what she's afraid of. This is what you can look out for. Mm-hmm. This is how you can support her. Mm-hmm. She might cry for absolutely no reason. Mm-hmm. And she might sound insane to you. Don't tell her she's insane.
Right.
Just be there and support her. She knows, like you would be like, she knows she sounds crazy, but she can't, if those things happen, like she can't help it. And you just need to let her talk it through. You just need to let her ride it out and find ways. And for me, that postpartum period of like sitting alone in my room in isolation is the worst thing that I could do for my intrusive thoughts. It's the worst thing that I could do for my healing. And I remember like when I had my fourth, I would call my friends and I'd be like, okay, come visit me on Shabbos. And they're like, what? Like, no, please.
I need people.
And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, and then I would just spell it out for them. I'm like, I get really scared when I'm alone with my thoughts. I need you to come over and hang out with me.
That's huge that you did that.
And they were like, okay.
Yeah.
And then like, I clearly remembered, I think he was 3 weeks old and my friends came over and he woke up at a certain point and they were here and we were hanging out. And then all of a sudden they left.
Yeah.
And it just whoosh, like a dark cloud came over me. But I was so fresh postpartum. I was like, I'm going to walk to the other side of town where my family is. And I was like, are you nuts? You can't do a 30-minute walk right now. Like you just had a baby 2 weeks ago,
right,
or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. But in a way, like knowing that. So if you suffer from that, and I hope that this conversation really brings that awareness to
Yeah.
people, whoever are listening, but also like, you're not alone. You're not crazy.
Mm-mm.
These things are totally normal. You have to do what works for you. And if that means that you're going and you're sitting at Delice or Lamelo or Pico Cafe or Lenny's Casita or whatever it is with a 7-day-old baby because that feels good to you, do it. Nobody cares. Who cares if people are talking? They don't have to live in your head with the postpartum, or they don't understand what you not going out might lead to, how you react to your spouse or to your other children. If that's what does it for you, then do it, because it's the only thing that's going to help you feel better and heal better.
Amazing. 1,000%. There's Liat. Well, tell me what other questions you have for me.
I guess we did touch upon it a little bit, but what kind of support can people offer? Because I know that in some cases, going back to what we said earlier, of sometimes as women, we kind of push aside our own symptoms.
Yeah.
So if you see somebody struggling, or you get an inkling of like something isn't right with her right now, like it's a little bit more than just baby blues. How can they show up and be of support?
That's a great question. I think, first and foremost, when we talk about support for a peri or postpartum woman, first and foremost, baby daddy or mama daddy, whoever you're having the baby with, your partner in life, really, I would say to start, really should get some psychoeducation around all of this.
Mhm.
I think a lot of, especially men, great men, Lenny's an amazing man, but I don't think he really knew much about this.
Right.
And we are in a generation now, thankfully, where people
dumb it down by what you mean by psychoeducation. How can somebody get access to that information?
So even just online at this point, Google it, use ChatGPT. I would say one of my favorite places to get information and also get help is something called PSI. I don't know if you've heard of it. Postpartum Support International. It's an amazing organization. It's international. So wherever country you live in, you go online. They have unbelievable psychoeducation on there, where partners can learn. There's even a tab for dads where they can learn about postpartum depression, pregnancy health, how you can be a best support system, a variety of different topics, so that they're well versed even going into the pregnancy.
Got it.
They kind of know a little bit what to expect, how they can support, maybe have some conversations throughout the pregnancy and postpartum with their wife or partner about what they might need, and also for what they should look out for. Because a lot of times, like you said, we women, we will go to the end of the earth before we admit we need help.
Right.
And so definitely that. I would also, just to mention that Postpartum Support PSI has online tons of access to postpartum support groups, both in person and online. And what's great, I think postpartum, support groups in general are great for postpartum women.
Yeah.
If you don't want to go in person, you can go online. You can go anonymous online. You can just close off your face, make up a name. I did that myself when I had my son, and I thought it was amazing to be able to talk to other like-minded women who are going through very similar things.
Because I think there's a unity in the pain.
Absolutely.
Of knowing you're not alone.
Absolutely.
And instinctively we know that, but when we're going through it, we forget.
Yeah.
And it can feel very, very lonely.
Very.
Especially after the first week or 2 weeks, we're kind of like, if your family goes home, the help kind of leaves.
The meal train stops.
And then you're like, okay, what now? You're like, it's just me and you, bud. Like, and I think that is also when there's the dip in the hormones.
Yeah.
And, and there's so much fluctuation and change. And it's like, okay, now I'm really like left alone. And now I really have to figure this out.
Yeah. And that's usually the point where it'll go in the direction of, okay, so baby blues are over, right? It's like 2 to 3 weeks. Now it's are my hormones going to regulate, and am I going to be okay? Or am I going to develop postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, postpartum psychosis? There's a variety of different things that we haven't talked about, but there are a variety of different mental health challenges that are very common and can come about. And if I can veer off for a second, in terms of, because we kind of alluded to this prior in the conversation about risk factors. But we didn't really talk about them. I think, this kind of converges here, because I think if your partner or friend or family member, whoever's closest to you, has the psychoeducation around all of this, at that point, they're able to pay more attention.
Yeah.
They're able to see, okay, what are the symptoms to look out for? How are, both emotionally, physically, and cognitively. And it's this also where risk factors play a huge role. Somebody who has, I'll throw a few risk factors out here. Somebody who has a history before pregnancy of any type of anxiety, depression, OCD, or even like in more extreme cases, psychosis in their life is at an exponentially higher rate to potentially get postpartum PPD or PPA. That's like off the bat. So if you know that about yourself, learn about it so that when you get pregnant, you almost expect it. And if it doesn't happen, great. But if it does, you know how to deal with it. You can find it early, you can get help, and you can have a much, much better experience and not have to suffer as much. So risk factors, that another risk factor, which by the way, while you were telling your story, it was just risk factors coming out of your head.
You can use me as the example.
Like so many risk factors, not that so much psychoeducation, a husband who was wonderful, but not available at the time of your life, really not available, just, and for needed reasons. He's trying to build a business. So, not so much support. You didn't have other support, right? Familial support is very important, whether it's friends, family, the partner, very, very important. Any big stressors in life, whether it's financial stress, whether it's emotional stress, whatever it is going to also be a huge risk factor. Sleep deprivation. Huge risk factor. Huge.
It's kind of like a catch-22.
It is. But you know what? For a lot of men that don't know how to necessarily emotionally support their women, I'm not saying you should learn how to, it's very important. But then first and foremost, make sure she's sleeping. Like number one, either hire her help to make sure she's sleeping or take turns with her, because sleep deprivation will almost automatically put you on a down spiral. It's just science. And that is a huge risk factor to developing PPD or PPA. There was another one that I wanted to talk about. There's a few more. They'll come to me as we chat. But I would say those are the biggest ones. And instability from your
number one.
Instability. I mean, you had so many risks. Think about that with risk factors. You were moving all over the place.
I was a target. It was coming for me.
It was coming for you. Your husband was not around for valid reasons. He might not have necessarily known how to support you too. You guys were in the beginning of your marriage. You were so young, both of you. Financial was a stress for you as well. I mean, there was so much instability. You didn't know where you were living. Our first session, I'm like, whose house is this? And you're like, oh, we're staying at someone's house. It's an Airbnb. You didn't even have a home. So these are all huge risk factors. So I definitely would say
look at me, guys. She literally labeled every textbook thing and it was check, 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 check. If I could sit here today, thank God, there's hope for
100%. 100%. And what's interesting too, and you can speak to this, a lot of times clients will tell me, I came to you for X reason, and then I learned A, B, C, D, F, G about myself. I think even for you, you came primarily in the postpartum period. You worked a lot around postpartum depression, but there were so many throughout the time that we worked together. There were so many other aspects of yourself that we worked on in terms of growth, just as a person.
Because in order to be a parent, once you're, going through postpartum and all these things, there are things that are going to trigger you throughout. And I had to address those things that were triggering me, because those triggers could also trigger another response later on. And so I had to address those things. And throughout addressing those triggers or those challenges, or even learning how to communicate with myself, with my husband, and with my children, even with friends in conflict, whatever it was, I learned so much that it was kind of like, I don't want to stop therapy, because I'm learning so much about myself and I'm becoming such a better version of myself. But then at some point, you got to cut the cord. And you got to go out into the world, and you just got to be. And that was also a conversation for me of growth, to say, okay, Lisa, I think we're done here. And you're like, okay. You're kind of I could see it. You're I was waiting.
I was waiting for it.
Because it felt like I want to say the last month, the last 2 months of us meeting, I was kind of okay, not it didn't do anything for me, but it didn't do anything for me. So I'm I was I don't think we need it anymore. And that doesn't mean, I want to say that here, it doesn't mean that I didn't continue doing work in other capacities, but for the container that Lisa and I started in, I grew out of that.
Absolutely.
And then it led me into other things, which is conversation for another time. But it was like this weird thing. And then all of a sudden I'm like,
it was an awareness.
It was this awareness, but then all of a sudden I'm like sending you like these invitations to these like, women's events or whatever. And I'm like, wait, but like she's my therapist. Like she can't be here. She's my therapist. And I'm like, no, she's not my therapist anymore. Like she's just Lisa, and it was like this weird, me being okay with that and me being comfortable with that. And now here you are, where I've invited you to be on my podcast. And like, we've taken off like the blurred voice.
Absolutely.
And like the blurred face, like what do they call it? They do like the AI voice of like, we have your
talking
child.
to it.
But like,
I remember seeing you at events and I would wait for you to come to me. I would wait. I mean, I'm supposed to do that.
Right.
But that was actually while you were my client.
Yeah.
Once you weren't my client anymore, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would wait.
Because our kids were in the same school too.
Right. Yeah, we had a lot of like layover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. It really is. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. It was amazing to work with you. And I really hope for any like women that are listening or spouses or caregivers or friends that you really do learn, take the psychoeducation piece, learn about it, implement what you can, be more mindful of where you're at and what you're going through, and be brave enough to get help. It will change the trajectory of your life. And your entire experience as a mother and pregnancy. So, I wish somebody had told me this when I was going through it. I actually, had just got my certification in maternal mental health right before seeing you.
Wow.
Yeah. And the irony is that while I was still seeing you, probably 2 years later, I got pregnant with my first baby. And after having my first baby, I had very bad postpartum depression. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't have it with my second, but I got very bad.
Isn't it crazy? Because you have the training, you have the skills.
I have the skills. I knew I was depressed. I was like, okay.
Something was off. Right.
But
which just goes back to what we were saying earlier of like how we dismiss our own feelings about it. If we just sleep a little bit, we'll be fine. If we just, they'll be fine. If I just get an extra coffee or get an extra croissant and it's not.
And I would constantly tell them, oh, this is normal. It's the hormones.
Yeah.
It's so normal. It's the hormones. And at some point, like we said, going back to severity, duration, and impairment, it was way longer than 2 weeks. We're looking at months at this point, months. And by the way, postpartum depression can last up to a year after birth and postpartum anxiety. It was months later.
I think I came to you around, I think she was 8 months old.
Yeah. It was months later where I was crying nonstop.
Yeah.
I found myself hiding in my closet in the dark a lot.
Oh, wow.
It was bad. I would just sit on the floor. It was like the only place I felt safe.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get very bad depression, intrusive thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point is when I thought, okay, maybe this isn't just hormones, but it's still even someone who's a licensed therapist who's going through this the first time. I'm not sleeping. My husband went back to work. It's LA, to make it financially. He went back to work after 4 days postpartum. I was alone. I don't have a Sephardic mom who moves in and cooks for me and cleans for me. I wish I did. Very Ashkenaz. My mom's like, I'm available from 12 to 3 to help babysit, And, that's a separate conversation too. Like the way we do baby making now, like just having babies is so absurd to the health of the mother. We used to, it takes a village was a statement for a reason. I'm a big believer we should go back to the village.
To how it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there would be a lot less postpartum depression.
Going back to what you said about taking a village and what you spoke about in the beginning about your OB, clinically speaking, the OB appointment at 6
weeks
is not enough.
No.
Don't wait till 6 weeks.
Mm-mm.
If something feels off, call.
Absolutely.
Seek help. Schedule that appointment. And if they tell you, oh, it's only 6 weeks or whatever it is, for a postpartum mom, 6 weeks to just get like, oh, everything looks good. You're great. You're signed off. You're good to go. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. But like you need more than that.
Absolutely.
Especially when at the 2 week mark, 2.5 week mark, the milk is maturing if you're nursing, or your milk is drying up if you chose or not chose, or you took the pill in the hospital, whatever route you chose. At that 2 week mark, that 3 week mark, the hormones are recalibrating.
Yes.
And you need somebody in your corner at that point.
Absolutely.
And not waiting till that 6 week appointment because everybody's gone back to work and life has resumed to normal and the meal train has ended and all of those things coming together. Don't wait and be like, I don't want to be a bother. Be a bother.
Yeah.
Because you maybe not being a bother is going to exacerbate your symptoms.
Absolutely.
For later.
Absolutely.
And you're only harming
yourself in the process. Yeah. And so the reason why I kind of brought up my own experience was that even for someone who's well-versed clinically and has been doing this for so many years, I myself didn't I had these ego dystonic thoughts. I didn't, meaning I knew they were off, but I was like, no, it's probably, again, attributed it to the hormones or not sleeping. And so I do also think this is where partners, husbands, family members that are really close to you need to come in and step up and say, you know what, I think something bigger here is going on. I think we should let's just, first take a first step. Yeah. First step could be getting screened for it, a diagnostic evaluation. It could be, if you feel more comfortable, going to your OB office, go to your OBGYN's office, talk to them about it. They'll give you the PHQ-9 and the GAD-7, which are 2 clinical tests that'll just show you kind of where you are on the anxiety and depression scales, like how severe is it. Yeah. But ultimately, going to see somebody. I want to cut you off for a second about the PHQ-9 and GAD-7. Those are also easily Googleable. Yes. If you're scared to make that phone call and go in the office and fill out that form in front of somebody, print it out, do it on your phone. You can score yourself and you could see where you are. And if your numbers are up there, call and get help. Yes. That's a great point. Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't know where to call and get help, there's a lot of different resources. You can reach out to me. You can reach out, like I said, on PSI with whatever country you're living in. There's lots of different therapists. Please try to find somebody who specializes particularly in maternal mental health. There is specific training that goes into that. It could put you back if you don't find someone who specializes in that. So that's really important. And then, it's very possible. I know a lot of people are like anti-meds, especially in LA, like they just want to do herbs and, whatever else. Sometimes meds are needed. Sometimes duration of time. Exactly. And that's okay. I've had a lot of clients who, oftentimes seeing a therapist and getting on a small dose of an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety just temporarily help them. And then that was it. They were done after that. Yeah. Within a few months to a year. And some realized, you know what? I had undiagnosed anxiety my whole life. It just kind of blew up here. And now I'm taking anxiety medication and I met with a therapist and this has changed my life. So there is no right or wrong. Everyone's different. Everybody comes with their own entire package. Yeah. But my biggest, what I want to share most of all is, and what hopefully people are inspired by Liat's story, is that try to be aware, do the education piece, do the research piece, and be brave and reach out. Yeah. You do those things. And I will say, it sounds like your experience of your postpartum depression kind of happened maybe within the 3-4 month mark. Yes. In my experience, I was on autopilot for about 7.5 months until the instability risk factor came in, and we were here and we were kind of all over the place, and there was so much shift going on that all of a sudden rage came in. And then I realized something is wrong. But when I was in autopilot, I didn't know that was one of the signs of just kind of in this brain fog, in this cloud. There are certain things that I don't remember from that time. And it's not because I blocked it out. It's maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I need to do some I don't know, but I actually don't remember. So everything you're describing is postpartum depression. Part of postpartum depression cognitively is that brain fog, A, and B, that sort of numbed out feeling you're describing. Yeah. That flat affect where you're just on autopilot and you don't even have any feelings. Right. Also a telltale sign of depression. But I didn't know it. I was going through it and the people on the other end didn't feel it. Right. Because I was still acting the same. Only once another risk factor came in, the instability, did it trigger. And I was like, okay, something's wrong here. And that was when I was 8 months postpartum. So there really is
no right or wrong time to get the help that you need. You just have to have your eyes open to hopefully, please God, you don't need this, and you, whoever's listening, doesn't suffer from postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. Should you need it, be attuned to yourself, to your body, to what's going on, what's happening, and be able to have the awareness to know I might need to get help. And help doesn't mean for so long. Like when I said earlier that I did therapy with Lisa for 5 years, it was a short duration of like the postpartum, I would say.
Yes.
And it was more heavily focused on
Recreating
me and refining myself and my way of communication and triggers that I had, or behavioral responses that I had, or cognitive thinking that I had. So don't hear 5 years and get scared and freaked out, because that wasn't what it was. Absolutely. And if you take anything from this conversation, I am a very private person and I don't share my story openly in any, if I'm close to you, you'll hear my story, or if I feel like there's something that you can benefit from as a mom who's going through it, I will share my story, which is why I asked Lisa to be here today. And I really hope that whoever is listening today either feels I'm not alone, feels supported, has a little bit more education on how to get that support, knows how to maybe support somebody going through it, and will make that call should they need. So really thank you, Lisa, for coming. And I mean, I think that this is going to help a lot of people feel less alone and know how to get the help that they need. So thank you.
You're welcome.